Alright guys, M-Tech Guy here. Now as it's winter time here in New Zealand now, it's a damp old morning, it's bloody freezing. I've got some firewood over here that needs chopping because central heating hasn't been invented in New Zealand so far. But it's very peaceful out here this morning. I can hear the ocean in the background, and for once when I'm trying to make a video early on in the morning I haven't got seagulls going absolutely berserk in the background there. So it's going to be a good morning. We're going to work on the E46 this morning. So we're going to take a look at a few little tidy up jobs this morning, a few little maintenance items that we did look at what was required in the previous video. Now, I'm not going to try and tackle everything this morning, but we're just going to chip away, just doing a little bit at a time. And to be honest, I don't have a great deal of money right now, so I'm just going to be able to do what I can do. So unfortunately, I'm not going to dive in and do a thermostat expansion tank, a full cooling system or anything like that as much as I'd like to, but this is the reality of running a car on a tight budget. We're just going to do what we can do. So anyhow, let's get into it. Well, first things first, if we take a look in the boot of the M5, just been down to the post office and we've got a parcel here from a viewer. Let's see what we got here. This was sent by Rocky. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, Yorkshire tea in the house. My favourite. Best tea on planet Earth, and you better believe that. We note here. It's not so easy to get Yorkshire tea in New Zealand here. It's funny, when you move from the other side of the world, it's amazing how you really crave all the food and everything that you've always known from back home, more so than all the new stuff that's available. So nice one, Rocky, thanks a lot for that. If any of you guys out there want to send anything to the channel, what I'll do is I'll leave the postal address in the description below. Well, things are looking up because I've got some good subscribers behind the channel. Well, there goes my peaceful morning. Alright, so to start off with, I think we'll tackle the power steering reservoir. Now that was all leaky. We have given it a good clean up, but it's not unusual for these things to start leaking pretty badly over the years. It normally starts from the small O-ring underneath the cap there. Not unusual for the hoses to leak also. We've had a look at them. They look okay at this stage, just had a bit of oil contamination from the leaky cap. So hopefully they'll be all good. We'll keep an eye on them. So we'll remove the cap, we'll give it a good clean up, and then I'm going to refit a brand new O-ring. I picked this one up from the BMW dealer, the local dealer. It was only a few dollars. And then once that's replaced, I'll give the power steering a fluid change. Now the power steering system on the E46 actually takes transmission fluid. It takes Dextron 3. Now the later power steering systems on the later BMWs took CHF 11S. But the E46 is just good old Dextron 3. So it's relatively cheap. I normally go for the Castrol stuff, but this time round I ended up buying the Penrite Dextron 3 transmission fluid, and the reason why I bought this over the Castrol is because it had 25% off, so it worked out much cheaper. And Penrite's a good brand, an Australian brand. They do make good oils, so I'm going to be changing it out for this stuff. Now 1 litre is normally enough. I have done a dedicated video to just a power steering fluid change on a BMW previously. I'll leave a link at the top of the screen for that one now. So basically what we're going to do, rather than drain it all out and refill it, we're going to take the easy option. We're just going to suck everything out of the reservoir there, and we're going to refill it with new fluid. We're going to cycle it through the system. We're going to turn the rack from lock to lock, shut her off, suck it out again, refill it again, carry out the same procedure again. I'm basically going to do that 2 or 3 times until I don't have any more brand new fluid left. And although you are essentially diluting the fluid as you change it, it does change out about 98% of the fluid, which is more than enough. Now I know there's a lot of you guys that prefer to pull the hose off the bottom end there and drain it out and then refill it, but to be honest with you, I find this way a lot quicker and easier and less messy. It's the way I've been doing it for years. So anyhow, let's get on with it. Right, we'll get rid of the old gasket. Well compressed. It's been on there a long time. we go. I'll give this a bit of a clean up. We'll just make sure this hole is still breathing. And we'll fit the new O-ring. There we go. So, for relatively hardly any money, we'll manage to breathe a bit of new life into that one. So, I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that would just replace the whole cap, which comes with an O-ring, but for the sake of a few dollars for just the O-ring and 2 minutes to clean the thing up, be good for another 20 odd years now. So now we can remove all of the old fluid. I'm just going to do my usual trick, just use a nozzle out of an old soap dispenser. Look at that, it doesn't look too bad, but it is looking a little dark, so I'm pleased that we're changing that out today. New fluid in. Yeah, you look at how red that is. Definitely worth giving this a bit of a freshen up. Don't spit everywhere. Right, we'll fire it up, we'll let that cycle round, I'll turn it from lock to lock, and then we'll come back and repeat the process. Right, now I'm going to repeat the process again, so we're going to fire it up again, turn it lock to lock, let it run for a couple of minutes, and then suck it all out and refill it. And judging by the edge of the bottle, I've got about half a bottle left, so I might get 1 or 2 more drain and refills out of it. See how we go. So that's that little job taken care of. Now I did 3 drain and fills, so that just leaves me a little bit of fluid left in the bottom there for any top-ups in the future. And there we go, a nice little clean-up job done. New O-ring, so we're not going to get any more leaks in the near future. Changed the fluid for relatively little cost. Right, what's next? No leaks from the Vanos hose. It does look to be either original to the car or it's been replaced with a genuine one at some point. No leaks nonetheless. But I think after the water leak debacle we had a few weeks ago, what I might do is give this footwell a bit of a freshen up and then put the floor mat back in. I left it out for now because I didn't want the floor mat to trap all the moisture there, but everything's looking bone dry now. I've had a few rainstorms, everything seems happy, so I can get rid of my makeshift paper floor mat here now. Didn't do much anyhow. We'll give this a vacuum, give it a bit of a freshen up with the carpet cleaner again, and then once that's dried off, put the floor mat back in. Certainly see when the kids have been in the car. Rightio, so the next wee job I'm going to take a look at taking care of is straightening up this parking sensor at the rear here. Now if we look at this one, that's how they should look, sort of sitting horizontal, whereas this one's on a 45-degree angle, so I'm not sure how it's ended up like that in the past, but every time I back out of my driveway, it starts going nuts as soon as it sees the retaining wall, because obviously it's throwing the beam pattern all out of whack. Now I originally thought that I'd have to remove the whole rear bumper just like on the E60 to gain access to the parking sensors there, to be able to disconnect them and remove them from the bumper. I've done a previous video on that in the past, and you can see where I've got the tow bar fitted here. The bottom of the bumper has been all notched out, so to be able to slide this straight out is going to have a bit of an obstruction there. Looking a bit closer, it does look like this trim piece does come out separately where the parking sensors are located, so I'm going to take a look at removing that and leave the bumper in place, and then we'll get to the back of this parking sensor and get it straightened up. Alright guys, now I didn't really want to spend time removing the whole rear bumper, so what I've done, just to gain access to that one parking sensor that we need to realign, is I've removed this cover from underneath the car there. So this basically covers up the charcoal canister underneath here. There's just 3 of these clips holding it, one there, one there, and one there. That one was quite difficult to get out. Made a bit of a mess of that one, so we'll replace it with a brand new one. But anyhow, if we take a look underneath, you can see the parking sensor right there. As you can see, it's on a bit of a funny angle. So that connector, so it just wants to shuffle round anti-clockwise a few degrees. You can see where the clip doesn't quite marry up with the clip on the car. So I'm going to see if I can release that and twist it round. It looks like it's hard up against that bumper trim piece there. So I'm going to get my hands up there to see if I can sort it out. Right, I've managed to release that from the rear side of the bumper there and give it the old twisteroo. So now I'll just relocate that in the right position. We should be all sorted. Right, I've got that reseated now, and it actually turns out that it didn't want just a 45-degree turn and clicking back in. It actually wanted to go right the way around. If you look at it from this way clockwise, till the connector was on the right hand side of the car, so it was right the way around. Not sure how they even managed to get that to hold correctly the way it was, but anyhow, it's all sorted now. That's all clicked in properly. And if we take a look around the back, it's facing correctly now, all nice and horizontal. There we go, that's the cover back on. I've treated myself to some new clips there as well. Sorted. All right, now next job, we're going to get rid of this M badge. It's got to go. We need to get it out of here. Now I do feel a bit weird about removing this one today, because this car was originally ordered with a badge delete, so it should have had the 330i badge on the boot lid there, which I'd much prefer. Now over here in New Zealand, it wasn't unusual when the cars were ordered with a badge delete for the dealers to install an M badge like this on the M Sport models. So as far as I'm aware, this car has had this M badge on it since it was brand new from the dealer, but from the factory they were never specced with these M badges. And to me, it just cheapens the car a wee bit, because a lot of people over the years have stuck these M badges on that they've picked up off eBay or wherever. It does cheapen the car. I don't like it. So today, I'm going to get rid of it. Now, I would really like to get a proper factory 330i badge for the boot lid there. That would really finish the car off nicely. But to be honest, they're not that cheap. So unfortunately, that's not going to happen anytime soon. So we're going to have to just go plain Jane with it for now. Once this one's removed, I might be riding around town looking like I'm driving a 318i. Whatever. Let's get this badge removed. Right, so we'll start off with the heat gun. We'll see if we can soften this 23-year-old adhesive that's holding this thing on. Now we'll take a bit of dental floss and see if we can hacksaw our way through the back of the badge there, through the adhesive foam. we're left with this gluey, foamy residue to get rid of. Now I was going to buy one of them caramel wheels, a toffee wheel, to go on the end of my drill to speed things up and getting this all cleaned up. But my local hardware store, the big chain store, they're like $25, so stuff that, we'll do it the old way. I'm going to use one of these. It's basically just a plastic razor blade. It's exactly the same as what I used on the M5 when we replaced the UV faded M5 badge on the back of the boot lid. So these do the trick, but even though it's plastic, they do mar the paint slightly. So once we've finished with this one, I'll give it a bit of a polish up, bit of a clean up. Now this is pretty hard stuff. It almost looks like this badge has been off at some point and someone's used some actual contact adhesive to put it on. That's super hard, so it might take me a bit longer to get this cleaned up. I've got some spray panel prep here, so maybe we can soften the adhesive a bit with this stuff. Give me a fighting chance to get it off. What do you do when the adhesive's harder than the thing you're trying to scrape it with? It's going to be a bit of a mission, this, I think. Try a bit of compound, see if we can cut it down a wee bit, or just thin it out to be able to scrape it off, or just soften it if nothing else. I'll try a little bit of methylated spirits just to try and release this adhesive because it's stuck so hard. So this can mar the paint slightly, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to polish it afterwards anyhow. Right, I got rid of most of it there. There's a tiny bit of residue left on the paint and I'm struggling to get off, so I might try and polish it off, but we'll see how it goes with the compound. I think the abrasive was just cutting through that last bit of residue. Okay, it's so hard, and I think it's almost etched the paintwork a bit, unfortunately. That's better. Now we just need the 330i badge there. Alright, so I think next up we'll get the brake fluid changed. If you'd seen on my previous video when we went through, did a wee inspection on the new E46, you'll have seen that it was very old, very dirty, very overdue for a replacement. So we'll get that changed out and flushed through today. Now, one thing that is really cool about this early E46 is that it has a proper jacking point right in the centre of the front of the car there, whereas my old E46 330ci coupe didn't have anything like that. It had the aluminium under body brace with a small piece that was dimpled out, but if anybody has owned one of them before, you know, if you try and jack it up there, it'll just crush the aluminium. Whereas this one has got a proper little steel point there to jack up on, so that makes life a lot easier. My later E46, I used to have to jack it up on the chassis rails and then put the axle stands underneath the jacking points there, whereas this one, I can just get it up under that centre point there. Makes it much easier. I'm liking that. Well, let's get these wheels off and gain access to the brake calipers. So this is the first time I've had the wheels off the car. As you can see, the calipers do look quite rusty, even though they're in good shape. I wouldn't mind removing all 4 calipers and painting them at some stage, but the shocks still look in alright shape, no leaks. They still seem to ride relatively alright. So we've got the new wishbone bush there that was previously installed before I purchased the car. So yeah, it's not looking in bad shape. And even with the calipers being as rusty as they are, the rest of the car, I can't believe how much lack of rust there is. You know, all these fittings, even the wheel bolts that came out were just almost like brand new. I mean, over here in New Zealand it's not that bad for rust anyhow, but look at that backing shield there. It's like the thing's never been out in the rain before or something. I don't know what's going on. But anyhow, I certainly ain't going to complain. Right, let's get this brake fluid changed out. Now, although this is a right-hand drive BMW, the ABS unit is over on the left-hand side of the engine bay. So we're going to start with the caliper furthest away from the ABS unit, which is the right rear. Then we're going to go rear left, front right, and then front left. So we're going to work from the furthest away from the ABS unit and working our way closer to that unit. So as you can see, we've taken a fair amount out of this side, but it's got to push the volume of it right the way the longest distance to get to this caliper, but the other 3 hasn't got so much of a distance to travel, so it'll just be a little bit more for each one. So it's looking quite a bit off colour there, and you can see the clear stuff coming through here. So this one's all good. We'll now move on to the left rear. Now today I'm using the BMW .4 brake fluid, pretty much what I always use on all my BMWs. Now this is the low viscosity brake fluid. It's not really needed on a car that doesn't have DSC. This has got ASC, it's an earlier system. So low viscosity for DSC, ASC, you can use either. As you can see, we're using the one-man brake bleeder kit today. So I like using this thing. This is my favourite piece of equipment to use for bleeding brakes. Now, I do have a Motive pressure bleeder. I adapted the brake fluid reservoir fit-in to fit a BMW one, but to be honest with you, I hate bloody using the thing. And the other option of using a second person, well, that always ends up frustrating, so I just use one of these things now. Been doing it for years. It's nice and easy, straightforward. Don't have to rely on anybody else being here. I don't have to mess around rigging up all that Motive brake bleed nonsense, the pressure bleeder. Nice and easy, straightforward, low mess, no messing around. And now we're on to the last one. Done. So there we go, that's the old brake fluid now removed from the car, changed out. It's not completely blackened, but it's certainly discoloured enough. I'm quite pleased I got it changed out today. I think next up, before I reinstall the wheels, I'll just give these hub noses a bit of a clean up with the multi-tool and apply a little bit of anti-seize before I put the wheels back on. Been round with the multi-tool and they look a lot cleaner now, so the hub's going to sit a lot nicer and that'll give us a nice clean face to put a bit of grease on, a bit of anti-seize. So there we have it, got a nice thin smear of copper grease on there. So next up, I'll get the wheels back on, get it back down onto its wheels, and then I reckon just about had enough for today. But I've got to tell you, the more I look at this car and the more I dig deeper on it, the more I realise how well looked after this car has been. And I know it hasn't got a huge amount of kilometres on the clock. Pretty much every BMW I've bought in recent years has had more or less this amount of Ks on the clock when I've bought it. And I've never, well, out of every car I've ever owned, I don't think I've ever bought a used car that looks as tidy and as well looked after as this one. It's unreal. Now, I just want to say thanks so much for everybody's support so far. It's greatly appreciated. Now, if you do follow the channel but you're not yet subscribed, consider subscribing. I've got heaps of DIY videos already that you might find useful, and if you found this video interesting or useful, consider giving it a like. More E46 videos to come shortly. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks a lot for watching.